Take a break there to answer a phone call. That's what you get for shaving in the daytime. All right. Shook out the water. This hasn't had too many uses on it. I hope it gets softer with time. That's something I look forward to doing it here in September, is giving it some work. All right, let's do 12 swirls this time, just to give it a little bonus, just in case it doesn't quite pick up as much lather, as much soap as the boar. One. And there's 12. All right. Let's just see what happens. Looked like it picked up enough. See, the boar may be less dense and have less tips, but these are softer tips. So who knows which one will pick up more soap. Also, something to consider is the density of the knot. It may hold more soap inside of it and not release it as much. And lather hogging is when the brush tends not to release its lather. And it's easily overcome by just loading just a little bit more soap. You don't really have to load all that much. I have often found that lather hogging is not really an issue for me because I like really wet lathers. And so they just don't store up in a brush quite the same way as like an overloaded lather would, because then you got concentrate stored up in your knot. This is looking great. Doesn't look super dense. Doesn't look very prolific. Not dealing with a lot of lather at this point. Here's a different feel. I've used the same brush in the bowl for the whole month. This is smoother because it's more dense. Even with a new brush, I will need to run this soap drier than I usually do. And look at that big splay. There's just tons of lather inside that knot. I've put 1.5 teaspoons in. Let's go ahead and put the full 2 since it was a 12-second load and see if that doesn't wet it down too much. With big knots that can hold a lot of lather, can hold that concentrate, then you may want to make sure to get a good mix. Circulate that lather through the brush so that you don't end up with concentrate inside the brush and wet stuff outside. Looks like we got enough lather to do the job. So maybe 12 seconds was about right. Looks really good. I think there's so much in the brush that I'm going to rake the side lather off of the brush there, just to make sure we end up with plenty. And let me get my face wet. Because I did forego shaving last night, I am dealing with a longer beard, but I don't expect that's going to be a problem with this nice fresh blade. I mounted this knot pretty high with the Maggard SHD, which is an Oumo knot. It's the HW or HT or something like that. With that knot, I had to mount it as high as I possibly could. Adding a little bit of water. And it looks like maybe I let go of a little too much soap. I mounted that knot as high as I could to get it to reduce the backbone. This is very soft. Really enjoying this knot right now. That's great. First few uses, it was not super soft at all. I was debating on whether or not I could actually call it soft at that point. So this is the Manchuria. Doesn't have too much backbone. I mean, it is pushing my cheek around just a tiny bit, but then it gives way. And so it's comfortable. It's not shoving me around too much. Now I have an appointment I got to go to today. So I'm going to need to kind of be fast. So there we go. That worked out. 1.5 teaspoons of lather of water. Oh, just barely any. Okay, just a little bit over 2 teaspoons of water. Okay, let's see how this guy does. And I've been saying that I watch my pressure even when I am using an old blade. I don't want to put extra pressure. I want to come back and just do more passes. Do another touch-up instead of pressing down harder. And here's the reward. I got a nice sharp blade and I'm pretty much in no danger because of that habit of the light touch. And this is cutting through really well. Not super smooth like butter, because I think we've just discovered that MdC is not a super slick soap. And there's the shaveable area. I can take some of the extra here and touch up that area, but I'll bet I'll end up with a good shave. This is comfortable. It seems like it's being effective. With a mild gap like this, comfort is usually guaranteed. It's just the effectiveness and the close cut that's in question. I'm afraid the phone call distracted me. While the soap was on my face, I was going to tell you the results of the usage testing. So let's just save that for the end of the shave. All right, yeah, looks like 12 seconds was a good choice. I did end up with a really nice close feel after that first pass. Now, see that? I don't know if you noticed that skipping right there during that downstroke. Sometimes that's a sign that I wet my lather a little too much. It also could be a sign that the razor just has a little too much drag to it. And that's not something I've gotten from the Game Changer before in general. So I'm sure that maybe the lather is just a little too wet. Okay, and rinse. Yeah, I only need to do 2 passes. That's excellent. The feather after 2 passes gives me a better cut than the Nasset after 3 or 4. But that's to be expected. It's an old blade. It's a Nasset at 333 uses currently. So that tells the tale. So good. It gives me a couple more minutes that we can spend talking about the data on the MdC. But first, let me pause you and get a full rinse. I'm going to put on the splash. Enjoy that while I read to you. Okay, I used a balm all month. And now I get to use a splash. Now, you know, during the day and stuff, I was putting on a few colognes and things like that. So I got to experience different scents throughout the month. Because that light load of Vetyver sure would not last me past the shave, that's for sure. All right, my friends, let's look at the numbers. Now, what I did was I took the difference between, I think it was day 13 is when I started, recorded my first weight with a pretty light load that would be indicative of what I would get for the rest of the month. And so we've got 19 days of data in that regard. And so then the actual number, I believe, was 5 grams of soap used during that time period, during that many shaves. And to have a margin of error calculation, I basically just added and subtracted a gram to that. So I've got data for 4 grams used, which would be a really conservative, really light kind of load. And then I've got 5, which is the median, and then 6, which would be erring on the used more soap side, because my scale doesn't measure very well in decimals of a gram. It doesn't do that at all. And so when it tells me 343 grams, I don't know whether it's, you know, how close that is. And so that's what we're doing with this margin of error. And I think that'll help us to have a more accurate idea of the possibility range. So if it was 4 grams that I used during the 19 shaves, then we're looking at a rate per day of 21 hundredths of a gram, 0.21 grams per shave. If it was the maximum, and we'll probably just talk about the min and max here, if it was the larger value, then we're looking at a 0.32, just a tad under 1/3 of a gram. So that's still very little per shave. And let's acknowledge that we're talking about bowl shaves here, probably. Face latherers who overload are probably going to use 3 or 4 times as much soap, maybe even more. And so this is shaving the way I do, that you saw me do all month. I did end up with 5 or 6 passes of lather per shave, so I wasn't being skimpy. It didn't feel like I was depriving myself or anything like that. All right. So the minimum value, if I used that smaller value of soap per month, that would give me 956 shaves out of the jar. If I used a little bit more soap per time, that gave me 637 uses per jar. So that little bit does add up over time, because we are talking about a long period of time. So that translates into, with the larger, that'd be 21.2 months of use. And then with the lower amount per used per shave, that made it go longer to 31.9 months of use. Isn't that crazy? If you were able to get that kind of usage out of MdC, then you're looking at, what is that, 2.5 years of shaving. Pretty wild. Now, in the USA, when it takes $60 to $70 to get the MdC jar shipped over from France, that means you're looking at $2.20 or $3.29 per month of use. And so either case, whether it's the one that gives you 32 months of use, it's that's $2.20, or if it's the one where it's about 21 months of use, that you're not quite using as much. I mean, you're using a little bit more soap. That's still $3.30 roughly per month. And so it's a cheap soap, as it turns out, when you do the math per month. Now, sterling is $1 per month in the US. So this is more expensive than sterling, but an extra month, if you do prefer MdC, it's kind of inconsequential. Now, let's remember, thanks to a viewer, that if you're in the Europe, in the European Union or somewhere where it's easy to get the soap shipped to you from France, then you're looking at a much lower cost. If you're just looking at the euros, somebody told me it was 45 euros, then you are, if you are using the smaller amount per shave, then you're looking at $1.40. I'm sorry, €1.40 per month. If you go with the slightly larger usage per day, the range there, you're looking at €2 and 2.12 euros. I don't know what the cents version in euros is. 2.12 euros. So even, and then that's even less of a difference than when Americans have to get it shipped over to us. So your usage, your cost per month for MdC, if you're in Europe or somewhere where it's easy to get, you're looking at between 1.4 euros and 2.1 euros per month. Not very much. So, so there we go. How about that? I'll put this up, and so that way you guys can freeze frame it if that would help you look at the data. The top row is sterling, and then I haven't put the data in for chiseled face, but it was very similar to sterling. And so the middle value, what I experienced over those 19 days, is about a quarter of a gram per day used, and then that translated into 765 uses per tub of soap, roughly, and that translated to 25 and a half months of use at the cost of $2.75 per month. Of course, still that's pretty inexpensive per month. And if I were in Europe and bought it for 45 euros, then that looks at €1.77 euros per month of shaving soap cost. So there you go. I'm glad to have some good data on that. It does turn out to be an inexpensive shaving soap. It's more cost up front. And of course, I will say that I did learn more about MdC, that it just wasn't as good of a quality soap. By the time I ran it to get it as slick as I wanted it to feel, to have a kind of a luxury feel to it, it was way too dry for my face. Felt scrapey, left my face feeling a little dry after the shave. When I watered it, just like I water Sterling and most of those other good soaps, Barrister and Man, Holy Cow, No Lauder, Declaration Grooming, all those guys, then it's too wet, and it didn't have a lot of slickness for me. And so then I had to find a happy medium in there somewhere. And it just was running a little drier than I wanted, but not quite dry enough to dry me out and have a scrapey feel. But then that still didn't really have any kind of luxury feel or a good slickness, on your fingers. It worked okay on the face, but it was very lacking in the other departments. And so limited scent choices is another weakness for the brand. But if you happen to find one that you really enjoy, but to me, for the way I like to shave, it's not a luxury soap at all. Prix de Provence is another vegan soap, and it costs a lot less. And to me, the lather is just as good as MdC, maybe even better. And it's a lot cheaper. And that number 63 has an amazing scent. Love that. So there we go. There's my data. My data for the MdC. It is cheap. It's not a luxury soap the way I shave. Now, if you like it really dry, then it may be a good luxury soap for you. It really might, and that's okay. I think that's it. I'm just going to clean up. Just for documentation's sake, I did say, but let's be clear, just a little bit more than 2 teaspoons, almost 2¼ teaspoons of water for this lather today. I did have plenty of lather for 3 passes and a little bit more. So 4 passes of lather was generated, which is just fine. So it looks like that was the right load amount for this brush. All right, there we go, guys. That is it. You guys take care. This is Sugar Daddy Shaves. We'll see you next time.